Hello, my name is Dustin Lindberg. I'm a visually impaired person from Maple Grove, Minnesota. If you look on the map, Minnesota is broken up into two metro areas, the St. Paul metro area and the Minneapolis metro area. Maple Grove is a part of the Minneapolis metro area, and we are on the west half of the river, because Minnesota, like the lower half of the state, is divided by the Mississippi River. So if you live on the west side of the Mississippi River, you're in West Minnesota. If you live on the east side of the Mississippi River, you're in East Minnesota. So I grew up my whole life in West Minnesota. And West Minnesota is different than East Minnesota, because East Minnesota is woodland, beautiful waterfalls, stuff that Minnesota promotes on TV. And there's a lot of parks in East Minnesota, accessible bike trails, more nature stuff because of the Great Lakes and all the creeks and all that come from the Great Lakes. So Minnesota uses East Minnesota to promote advertisements on TV so people can come visit. West Minnesota, we used to be the prairie lands. So we just turned all the prairies into pretty much cornfields. So we're more farming country. And we have the Mall of America, we have the airport, we have more of the things that you use to get into Minnesota or shop in Minnesota. And then once you're done shopping and getting to Minnesota, that means a lot of people take the bridge and then they go over to East Minnesota to do the nature stuff. So my whole life, when I go into rural areas, I've been surrounded by cornfields, cows, that kind of stuff. But a lot of the people growing up in East Minnesota, they're more in, the forests, the creeks coming from the Great Lakes and all that stuff. So we have two different cultures. But when you get to North Minnesota, when you're going up the river, up past St. Cloud, there's a lake where the Mississippi River begins. So that lake, once you get past that, you're considered North Minnesota in a lot of people's opinions. So, and then when you're going south of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro, once you get down to Mankato on the west end, or Rochester in the east end, you're considered South Minnesota. So those are kind of the barriers we use. My whole life in Minnesota is spent in the west part of Minnesota. I grew up in St. Cloud, so I grew up in the very top of West Minnesota, and then after I got visually impaired, I had to move to the city so I can go to school, college, and work. So then I moved to Maple Grove because it was the most affordable on my income that I could live close to Minneapolis, because Minneapolis is more expensive area because most of the homes are new and most of the apartments are new and have built in the last 20 years. So it's super expensive. But if you live in the St. Paul side of the river, the East Minnesota, St. Paul is one of the oldest cities in Minnesota. So the homes are really old and the apartments are really old, but they're more affordable because they're old. Well, Minneapolis is a newer city. Everything's being built in the last 30 years. So the condos are newer, the apartments are newer, the homes are newer, the roads are newer, the buses they use are newer, the trains they use are newer. And because everything's newer, it just costs more money to live there. So Maple Grove was the most affordable I can move in that still had public transportation access. I'm visually impaired. I've been visually impaired my whole life. I went to go get my eyes scanned, and they said that my optic nerves are pink, or lighter color. So it's not my physical eyeball that's wrong with me, it's my optic nerve that's wrong. Me being visually impaired has affected my relationship with my family, I'm going to say, because most of my family lives up in St. Cloud where there's no public transportation. So I don't get to see them a lot because they live in an inaccessible area. And it's hard for them to even see me because St. Cloud to Maple Grove, where I live, is about an hour drive. And it's along the freeway, freeways with drivers get packed, traffic, noisy. So it's a pain in the ass for me to see them, and it's a pain in the ass for them to see me. So we don't see each other a lot. So I'm going to say the only negative about my vision problem is I don't get to see my family a lot. So when I do get to see them, it's a very special occasion. But when I do see them, we're close, and I can almost share anything with them. So a lot of times now with technology, like me and my family, we talk with each other through text messages because they know I can't drive to see them, and they don't want to drive an hour to see me because of all the traffic and stuff on Highway 94. So that's about me. And then last month, I graduated from Hennepin Technical College in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Brooklyn Park is here on the Minneapolis side of the river. It's the city next to me on the east of me in when I live here in Maple Grove. And I got my associate's degree in IT support. I work at a place right now called Data Recognition Center, or also it's called Data Recognition Solutions, or DRC. What they do is they're a call center for school districts. So school districts say, hey, I'm having issues with this computer. They call me, and I'm on the phone, and I help them with those problems. So my job is pretty boring. I pretty much sit in a call service desk in cubicles, and I pretty much help people with their school problems. So my life is kind of pretty boring, and the bus service I take is called Maple Grove Transit because I live in Maple Grove. So I take the Maple Grove Transit, and I just walk a mile to the bus station because Minnesota, if you live too deep in the suburbs, it becomes very car friendly. And the way the buses work is you drive or walk to a bus hub, and then the bus picks you up in the bus hub and then takes you to downtown Minneapolis. So because I live so suburban that I still buses, but not good buses, I have to walk to the bus hub, and then the bus then takes me to Minneapolis. Minnesota, they're really car-friendly state because we get cold, and people don't want to walk to the bus hub, wait at the bus hub, hop on a bus at negative 10 degree weather or negative 20 degree weather. So they just hop in their cars in their driveway, and they just drive in their warm cars to work. So because us disabled people in Minnesota have been speaking out against the way things are, the state's slowly putting public transportation in. Is it the best? No, but it's better than nothing. And I encourage disabled people to move here because, yes, our transportation is not the best, but living here is cheaper than living in places like New York City, San Francisco, Seattle, Washington. And then here in Minnesota, a lot of companies are nice. And if you're disabled and you walk into their company and said, hey, I'm blah, 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 and I want a job here, and I'm disabled, and this is how me as a disabled person will do the job, a lot of Minnesotans will hire you. So Minnesotans were not very discriminatory when it comes to disabilities if people with disabilities speak up and advocate for themselves. So And I also own a Facebook group to help blind and visually impaired people here in Minnesota. It's called Minnesota's Blind and Visually Impaired Community. I made the group because I realized that most of the groups on Facebook are by blind and visually impaired people who live in Austin, Texas, Florida, Miami, Florida, New York City, New York, Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, and I couldn't relate to them because they live in nice, beautiful, warm climates with public transportation everywhere and stuff, and I couldn't relate to them. So I made my own group, and I've been posting posts about Minnesota and stuff in other groups, so then more blind and visually impaired people can come move to Minnesota's St. Paul Metro and Minneapolis Metro, and they can live in one of these newer, older apartments or rental townhomes, because Minnesota, we do have a lot of rental townhomes where like you pay rent and then you pay association fee, and then they mow the lawn, shovel the driveway, and do the roofing and stuff for you. And then you guys can walk into your local businesses and say, hey, I'm disabled and this is how I'll do this job. Get a job and live a more comfortable life on your Social Security and your part-time job than if you lived in an area like New York City, San Francisco, California, Miami, Florida, Austin, Texas, and Seattle, Washington. So, and then you can still have your basic public transportation services. So, yeah. I have been in the ACB Facebook group for about 6 years, and I've been listening to a podcast called Blind Abilities for 6 years when I first joined Minnesota State Services for the Blind. And then from there, I prefer to share Blind Abilities podcast in local groups around Minnesota because the podcast is made here in Fridley, Minnesota. So I am about promoting Minnesota Blind podcasts because they're made in Minnesota, the state I'm from, and I like to promote blind Minnesotans because I'm, biased and I'm from Minnesota. So hope that kind of makes sense. Yeah, so in Blind Abilities, the podcast here in Minnesota too also gets state funding from State Services of the Blind here in Minnesota. So they make a really quality podcast. And also when I'm busy with work, because they work from 8:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. and then I walk to the bus hub near my work. And then I get there at 5, and then I take the hour bus ride home, and and then I cook supper, do some laundry, and shave, and that kind of shit, and suddenly it's like, oh God, it's almost now 8 o'clock at night, and I just go on repeat. I love my job, because I have some vision. Not a lot of my coworkers know that I'm visually impaired because I sit in a computer. We're all in our different cubicles and they can't see what I'm doing and I can't see what they're doing because of privacy in the IT industry. So yeah, a lot of my coworkers don't know I'm blind and visually impaired because I can function enough and pretend that I'm not visually impaired when I need to. When I don't need to, I don't deny that I'm visually impaired or blind, but people still here in Minnesota, they don't completely understand it. So a lot of times when I got my job at Total Wine, none of my, that's a big wine store here in Maple Grove, Minnesota, none of my coworkers know I was visually impaired because they wouldn't let a blind person or visually impaired person do the cashier job. So my boss is like, don't tell anyone that you're visually impaired because they don't the people at Total Wine, they won't trust you being cashier because they don't know if you can see the money. So I had to pretend that I was sighted, people thought it was weird because I had to lean closer to the cash register to see the buttons. But people just talked at work saying I was weird. But they would never thought about it was my vision. So, and then they trusted me at the cash register because they just thought, oh, Dustin Lindbergh's just a weird guy. He's not a visually impaired guy who can barely see the money. And then when I was working at Toys R Us, before they went bankrupt because of bad management decisions, I used to do the cleaning and the stocking the shelves. Well, the morning manager didn't know I was visually impaired because when I'm dusting and mopping the floors, they want someone that can see. So my afternoon manager, when I was stocking shelves, knew I was visually impaired because I told them, because they trust a visually impaired person to stock the shelves, but they don't trust a visually impaired person to clean. So my afternoon manager told me don't tell my morning manager that I'm visually impaired because they won't give me a full 8-hour shift, because my morning part was cleaning and my afternoon part was stocking shelves. So then I had a full-time job. And she warned me not to tell my morning manager that I was visually impaired because they won't hire me for their shift, and then I'll only be part-time because a lot of sighted managers or managers with disabilities don't trust people with disabilities be able to clean and stock shelves. So I didn't, and I was able to clean the store fine. The store was fine. The shelves were fine. So sometimes I can fake not being disabled, and I feel bad for that. But it's the only way I got some jobs. A lot of mom and pop businesses, like my local bakery, my European bakery down the road here in Maple Grove, they don't really discriminate so much against me because of my disability, because I can walk in there, show them my resume, and say, hey, I'm visually impaired, but this is how I'll do this, and you don't have to worry about me. Please hire me. It's the big corporate chains here in Minnesota, like Total Wine, Target, Best Buy, that are afraid to hire disabled people, in my opinion. But a lot of smaller mom and pop places here in Minnesota, if you walk in, like my local bakery that's ran by a Ukrainian lady down the street, about a mile down the street, she hires a bunch of people with autism, high-functioning autism. So a lot of the mom and pop businesses here in Minnesota will hire disabled people without a problem. It's the big corporate businesses like the Target that's based out of here in Minnesota, the Best Buy that's based here out of Minnesota, and a lot of the big corporation companies are the ones us disabled people have a problem with. And at Cub Foods, when I was maintenance, changing light bulbs and stuff, they knew I was visually impaired. But they didn't have me sanitize, when grocery stores you're supposed to sanitize the vegetable bins or the veggie bins and stuff. They didn't have me do that because I was visually impaired, but they did let me grab carts from the parking lot. They let me change light bulbs and all that stuff with my low vision. And then working at McDonald's, they had me clean because they said, they had me prove myself. Okay, you're low vision. Let's see what you can do. Then I proved myself because I worked 9 months cleaning full time. I would clean all the stuff at McDonald's. And then eventually, after I proved myself, they let me cook the fries. And then they were going to teach me how to cook, but I said, okay, McDonald's, you're not being stable hours. I want more buyer pay. And then I left for Cubs. So I believe that all disabled people should work. But hard part is none of these big corporate chains in the United States want to give them a chance. Like for me, when I got this call center tech job, when I was going through this temp agency, I did not tell them that I was visually impaired or disabled, because if they were not going to take me serious, because they're a big corporate entity. The only time I told them when I was disabled is after I got the job. So now that I got the job, I'm slowly telling them, okay, this is not working. This is my accessibility needs at DRC, so the place I work. So, yeah, I know this is not professional, but you can use these clips I'm sending you to put them together and see if your audience would even be interested in me, because my life is pretty boring. I live in a rental townhouse because it's cheaper than living in a brand new apartment. And I go to work. I take public transportation, the city bus, to get to work. It normally takes me an hour. And on the Metro Mobility bus, I call it Metro Mobility because, and a lot of people here call it Metro Mobility because it gets you there quick. Metro Mobility here in Minnesota means quick. It's a quick transportation method. So we take the fastest buses possible. We take Metro Mobility. It's a faster bus route, we call it. And we just try to live our everyday lives. And I do have some frustrations because I'm visually impaired. But my life, me being visually impaired, is way easier than someone who's completely blind. Because a lot of blind people in Minnesota, they even try to go to mom and pop places, and a lot of them are turned down because they have zero vision. To me, I have less of a struggle because I have some vision. So because I have some vision, companies have more faith in me to do the job than someone who is blackout. So my advice for blind people out there is start your own business. Because if you come to a place like Maple Grove, here I live, there's like hundreds of homes. In the middle of all these home developments, there's a huge ass shopping mall. And the shopping mall is always looking for new tenants, new restaurants, concepts to try. So if you call the shops at Arbor Lakes, for example, their call center, and say, hey, I'm a blind and visually impaired person, and I want to start a restaurant in your mall for other blind and visually impaired people, and this is how I'm planning to do it. And you explain to the mall staff, this is how I'm planning to do it. And if they support your idea, they will help you set up a place in the mall. So Minnesota, we have a lot of mom and pop malls. So call up mall management and say, hey, I want to start a business in your mall and I'm disabled. Can you please help me? And then a lot of the mall, because disabled people, if you don't want to be living on Social Security for the rest of your life, if you're completely blind, you need to team up with other blind or visually impaired people and create your own business. And because malls are dying because of Amazon, what they're doing is they're not looking for a normal JCPenney's anymore. They're no longer looking for normal Kohl's. They're looking for unique businesses like a restaurant made for blind people, ran by a blind person, take the mall, because it'll bring a different experience to the mall. And then a different experience to the mall will bring more customers to the mall. So as a blind and visually impaired person, you have to take opportunities like that. Because last week I went to Ridgedale. It's a big major mall in Wayzata, Minnesota. And Wayzata does have apartments and it does have public transportation, but they have a different bus system than Maple Grove because Wayzata has their own bus system. So I can't tell you about their bus system because I don't live there. So they have, like on the second floor by the Dick's Sporting Goods up there, they have a West African store that just sells shampoo, perfume, and cologne just from Africa. They don't sell any food, they don't sell any masks, they don't sell any candy. It's just African beauty products that were made in Africa. And they have been on the news making thousands in profit a day. Thousands, because everyone in that area is like, Ultra Beauties in every major suburban city, so they're not special. But this African store, it's one in a kind, and it's in the mall, and then it brings hundreds of guests every day to the mall just to check out the African store. So, so if you call the mall and say, hey, I want to start a business, and this is what I want to do, the malls are so desperate to compete against Amazon, Walmart, and Target.com here in Minnesota that they will be flexible with you, and they'll tell you what you need to do to start a business. And also here in Minnesota, you want to go to a credit union, like Spires Credit Union, Wing Financial Credit Union, and then there's a bunch of other small ones, because credit unions are nonprofits because they get some funding from the state of Minnesota's taxpayers. So if you're disabled and you go to them and you say, hey, I want to start a business in this mall, and it's going to be for disabled people, and this is the bus disabled people will take to get here, or for example, they will say, okay, let's call them all together, and then we can slowly build this thing up. Because if blind and visually impaired people don't team up together and work together to build this big business empire, our community will never improve. It will never prosper. It will never grow. We, as blind and visually impaired individuals, need to say, okay, we're going to move, for example, to North Fargo, North Dakota, and we're going to help thousands of blind and visually impaired people move to Fargo, North Dakota, and we're going to build stores, we're going to build banking systems, we're going to build, because the issue is blind and visually impaired people in the United States, we're so spread out that we don't have the manpower to build our own society like how the Jewish people did, how the African American people did down in Atlanta, or how the German settlers did here in Minnesota, because we don't have enough people in one area to build a beautiful, accessible land. If us blind, visually impaired people said, okay, all of us, we agree to have babies, blind babies, adopt blind children, and all live, for example, Fargo, North Dakota, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of us move to one area, we can support blind ran grocery stores. We can support blind ran banks. We can support blind ran businesses. And no one will be able to stop us. We can make accessible sidewalks, talking street, those street lights that talk as you're like walking across the intersections. You can make cities full of those. You can build a city that has trains that will take you from the city to the heart of the city, and it's all accessible. It's because us blind, visually impaired people, we're so scattered. We all need to move to like one spot and make a mega city for the blind community, for the blind and visually impaired, and just build our empire. And then as blind and visually impaired people have more babies with each other, we'll have more population, and we can slowly spend maybe 50 people to this city, 50 people to this city, 50 people to this city. And suddenly, we have this huge, massive blind and visually impaired people media and business empire to conquer the world with. So that's the issue with blind and visually impaired people, because one might live in Miami, Florida. Another one might live in Naples, Florida. Another one might live in Fort Myers, Florida. Another one might live in, So my goal in life is to make every blind and visually impaired person know about Minnesota and have them move here. And then like South Minneapolis area where there's good public transportation and new places to live, like St. Paul, where there's good new places they're starting to build in public transportation. And if we all I want them all to kind of float my fantasy is all these blind and visually impaired people will move to St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the our metro area, and when they join, and we can build this massive, beautiful, blind and visually impaired empire, and where there's hundreds of people like us, and the sighted world will finally realize that we exist and we can't be ignored. And that is my kind of dream, and that's why I promote Minnesota so much, because yes, the sucky part is our weather here is cold, but that's easy to solve. Just slap on a coat, slap on snow pants, slap on a pair of boots, and you won't even feel the cold anymore because you have the right clothing on. So that's my opinion, and you can take this recording, edit it to whatever you need, and I want you to put this recording on your podcast first, and just see if people are even interested in me. And then if your customers are interested in me, that's when we can kind of do a professional interview, because I'm really busy. Today I have to do dishes, I have to cook meals for all week for my job, so I don't have to pay to go across the gas station and get food every day on my only half an hour break. So I'm really, really busy. So let's put out this recording first on your podcast, and then we can say, hey, this guy Dustin Lindbergh sent a recording to me, and then you can play it on your podcast, and then you can comment on what I'm saying between the clips, like, oh, I disagree with what he's saying here, or oh, I find this interesting. Add your own comments about what you found out about Minnesota, and if your people like it, and then we can do more podcasts. We can do a real interview, because I don't want to waste everyone's time with a sit down when barely no one's not going to listen because I'm not interesting. I'm not doing this to be famous. I'm going to say I'm doing this to just spread awareness about blind and visually impaired people. And I want thousands of blind and visually impaired people to come move here to Minnesota, like the Minneapolis and St. Paul metro, where there's public transportation, mom and pop businesses are willing to hire you, like my Ukrainian bakery down the road, and just build a massive blind and visually impaired mega city and mega empire. And we can be influential, and we'll have every artist in the music radio station here in Minnesota will be a blind or visually impaired person. And you know what I mean? And I just want that. That's my dream. And it was nice talking to you. And just to let you know, I'm very busy. So I try to listen to blind and visually impaired podcasts when I can. But, I'm so busy trying to live life that I haven't really, thought about how would this interview work. So if you let me know, we can meet some weekend in September, because this weekend's already have all booked out. Because next weekend is my graduation party. My cousin from Kenya is coming to Minnesota, and I have to bus down there, help them bus back to Maple Grove, and I'm just a really busy person, and if we don't have the time to do real recording interviews, I can keep on sending you clips like this. You can keep editing them, answering your questions, and then you can phase them together, and then you can have a whole podcast episode with just recording clips. Because if you use an app like Anchor from that Spotify now owns, you can edit small clips like this, put them together, and it sounds like you actually had a live interview. So because I'm so busy, if you have questions, you can email them to me once I email you these clips, And then you can send me your questions and I can record them in voice memos, my answers. And then I can send them to you, and you can use an app like Anchor to put the clips together. And then, boom, you can sound like you did a whole live podcast. And then you can be honest with them. Hey, this wasn't live, but I edited it, and so it sounds live because I'm really busy. I put all my time into my Facebook group that's spared and listening to blind visually impaired podcasts between when I'm doing dishes and all that stuff. So I'm really busy because I'm the only one that runs my group. I'm trying to expand my group. I'm trying to spread my influence out there. There's an African-American lady who's on my group that I made admin, and I made her admin so she can post her YouTube videos that she makes on my group without me have to approve them, because she would post 20 videos that help blind visually impaired people. Then I'm on my lunch break trying to approve all 20 videos and then approve other people's posts. And I just got sick of it, so I made her admin, for example. So now she can just post her posts and she can help me because she doesn't work, because she's a contact creator in Vermont. And then she can help me moderate the group posts, because me working full time, trying to take the bus home, that's another hour. Trying to take the bus to work, that's another hour. So I'm 10 hours a day trying to do my life, trying to shave, shower, do dishes, make my meals. My life is just very busy, and I hope you understand that. So if you have any questions or stuff, you can just email me and I can send you clips like this and we can make it work. I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye. Hello, my name is Dustin Lindbergh, and I'm a visually impaired man from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Today, we're going to talk about my disability. We're going to talk about my background. And we're going to talk about what motivates me as a blind and visually impaired man to live on my own in Minneapolis and trying to hold down a job, and why I do it, the passion I have because of it, and why I'm not going to quit doing it. I grew up in a city called Wade Park, Minnesota. It's a small town / suburb of St. Cloud. My whole family is from the St. Cloud area. The Lindberghs, they're from St. Cloud. The Bechtolds, they're from St. Cloud. The Wegmans, they're from St. Cloud. And most of my close family is from the St. Cloud area. I grew up in a trailer park called Belclair Acres. It's a small trailer park next to the Quarry Park and Wade Park. So if you type in the Quarries and you go to the Wade Park one, I'm literally in the trailer park that's right next to the Quarries. I grew up there. I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. And I love them dearly. My older brother, his name is Taylor, and he sells insurance. My younger brother, Caleb, he does HVAC. So what that means is he installs air conditioners and heating devices inside of people's homes and into big skyscrapers in downtown Minneapolis. So, and then my sister's in middle school. We grew, and I'm always an animal lover. So I always grew up having a dog, having a cat, having chickens, having a pig, having snakes. We had a bunch of birds. I grew up having fish. Because I'm just a very animal person. We had lizards, but that's further down in the story. So, I grew up in this trailer park called Clay Acres with my siblings. Clay Acres is a very Mexican neighborhood. Our family and this other family were the only, and another family, so it was three of us, were really the only three white families in the neighborhood. And we had 2 or 3 Asian families, and the rest was Latino / Mexicans. So in our trailer park where we grew up, being white and Asian, you were a minority. Being if you were Latino / Mexican, you were the highest population in the trailer park I grew up in. I didn't mind. So our trailer house was on 99 Jormart Drive, St. Cloud, Minnesota. It's technically Waite Park, but because Waite Park didn't have their own postal office at that same time where we lived, so we were assigned a St. Cloud address even when we lived in Waite Park. So me and my siblings, we grew up in a 2-bedroom trailer house. My mom and dad were in one, and my little sister were with my parents, and me and my 2 brothers were in the other room. And me and my brother Caleb and my brother Taylor, at that time, we were very, very close, because think about when 3 of you guys are sharing 1 bedroom, you have no choice but to get along and be close. So we grew up sharing each other's clothes. We grew up playing with each other's toys. We grew up fighting over the TV, because our TV only had our bedroom only had 1 TV in it, so we fought over the TV. We used to go outside and play in the backyard of our trailer. Life was very calm. Life was very peaceful. My dad does body shop work for cars, so sometimes sometimes business would be slow, and we would be even more poorer than normal. We were poor before, but when business got slow, we were poor even more. But I knew always would be okay, because my parents are divorced. So my older brother Taylor, he's my step sibling, and my brother Caleb and my sister Kylie are my half siblings. So I have divorced parents, and so I got to live between my mom and my dad. So then if I needed anything, I could reach out to my mom. And hey mom, I need this. Hey mom, I need that. Hey mom, I need this. Hey mom, I need that. And she would always she'll give me things that my dad and my stepmom couldn't provide me, because she's my third parent. So my siblings always had a disadvantage, because they didn't have a third parent. I did. And when I was a kid, my mom was living in 3 places. She was living in Brooklyn Park. She was living in St. Cloud. And she was living somewhere up in North Minnesota, somewhere around Brainerd. So my mom was living between 3 places. So when, like, we were planning to hang out with my mom, just me and my mom, we would go stay at her apartment in Brooklyn Park. And then when, like, that weekend we were planning to go see my family, she would pick me up, and then we would, like, from Way Park and just drive over to St. Cloud, and then we will just stay at my Aunt Susie's house. Because what's the whole point of driving all the way down to Brooklyn Park and then driving all the way up when everyone I want to see is just one town over? So me and my mom, we spent every other weekend, I would spend a lot of time with my mom and Aunt Susie. I would stay at her house because why not? I want to see them, and Way Park and St. Cloud are right next to each other. So we would just crash at my aunt's house. I feel bad for my aunt because I drew all over her walls, played in her backyard, and terrorized her cats. But she had one cat that terrorized me, so it's kind of, so the world went full circle. And then I would spend time at my dad's. And then I had my great grandma who lived in Way Park, but she kind of lived on the Way Park St. Cloud border, in like the old part of town. So my grandma lived actually in town. So my dad would, my real dad and my real mom would, when I wanted to escape them both, would drop me off at my grandma's house. I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house, and she lived across the street from the Way Park fire, like city hall / fire department, because it's / police department, because Way Park's such a small town. They can have a fire department, a city hall, and a police department all in one building. So my mom would, like, or my real mom or my real dad would drop me off there, and I spent even some weekends with my grandma. Because I was with my dad, like, Monday through Friday. And then, like, on the weekends, like, when it was his weekends, I'm sorry to say, I was sick of seeing him and my siblings. So then I could hang out at my grandma's house. And it was escape from, like, everyone. And then when it came to my mom's, then I would go hang out with my mom, and because I'm sorry to say is I have autism with my low vision, and you're living in a 2-bedroom trailer, and an autistic kid needs a lot of space. When I went to my grandma's house, I was the only one at my grandma's house, and my grandma had a whole room just for me. So I could go and I could play, and I could, like, she would feed me cookies, like, actually homemade cookies and stuff. And I really, really, really miss my great grandma. Me and her were close, like peanut butter and jelly sandwich ingredients close. You can't eat a sandwich unless you have peanut butter and jelly. So, I really, really, really loved my grandma, my great grandma, and we hung out, like, almost like every other weekend too, because I see my dad Monday through Friday. I want to spend my weekends with grandma when I'm not with my mom. So I spent a lot of time, and when I was this age, I only knew about my autism because my autism was very, very bad, and my ADHD was very, very bad. And everyone was only noticing my ADHD and my autism, that no one really noticed my vision loss. And I didn't notice my vision loss either because I was so busy trying to fight my ADHD and autism. So, no one, even me, I didn't even notice my vision loss at this point because I was fighting another battle with 2 other disabilities at the time. So, me and my real dad, we're both stubborn ass bitches. So me and my dad, we always used to get in arguments. We always used to get into fights. And blah, blah, blah. Because me and my dad, we're both stubborn and we both don't like to lose an argument. So then when I needed a break, I would call my great-grandma, Grandma, I need to get out of here. And then she would pick me up, and of course I'll leave my dad a note saying, hey, I'm at Grandma's house. But you mean me, I just needed a break from my father. I love my father, but when you put me, that's strong-headed and ambitious, with my father, who's strong-headed and ambitious, and he's stubborn and I'm stubborn, sometimes our atoms bump. And a nuclear explosion happens. Like, I live with my dad. I love my dad, but I could never live with him. Because every time, we live together, it comes fights and yells and blah, blah, blah. Because me and him are just, the same. It's like living with my dad is like me living with an older clone of myself. And I'm not perfect. I'm not the perfect son. And my dad's not the perfect dad, and and I don't hold that against him. My dad has flaws, I have flaws, everyone has flaws. So, we grew up, I went between my mom's house in Brooklyn Park / apartment. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. I grew up in Way Park with my grandma. I grew up in St. Cloud, with my Aunt Susie. And I grew up in Belclay Acres. So I grew up with those 3 people and those people in my world, and now that's my rotation. And I loved it. I loved my life. I felt like, and my great grandpa, he was a sheriff of Stearns County, and I could when I went over to go visit my great grandma, he would tell me about some of this police stories he was allowed to tell me. He couldn't tell me about the Jacob Wetterling case. He couldn't tell me about the big stuff, but he could tell me oh, I pulled over this guy today and blah blah blah, and this is what he told me and blah blah blah. So I was also really close to my great grandpa, but my great grandpa did not live long. He died very young in my life, but he used to have a big, massive police antenna radio outside his house, and I was like, cool, Grandpa, can you call the aliens with that? Because when I was a kid, I wasn't really Christian, but I was I knew there's something bigger out there. So I always thought it was aliens E.T. or aliens Star Trek or aliens Star Wars. And I was ooh, there has to be aliens out there. And I was always thought and when I was a little kid, I'm 5 feet tall, and my grandpa has this big cellular tower thing outside his house to communicate with all his sheriffs. Because remember, Wade Park is such a small town that not everywhere had cell phone signal. So to communicate with the sheriffs way out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a cornfield, you have to have communications. And because my grandpa's the sheriff, he put a big freaking radio tower in his yard, so he can communicate with his coworkers in the middle of the boondocks, where there's no cell phone service. So this big, massive tower, and my great grandpa is also obsessed with freaking trains, and every little boy likes trains because, they're trains. So he had train stuff all over his front yard. He had this big police tower, and I was just fascinated with my great grandpa. He was a very fascinating man. It sucks that he died, but in his sleep. But at least he went peacefully. And then after he died, I would spend time with my grandma. My great grandma took me bowling. Winman Park had a bowling alley. She would take me to Dairy Queen. Dairy Queen, guys, is still my freaking favorite restaurant. McDonald's is second, but Dairy Queen and Culver's, that's up there. My grandma used to take me to those places a lot. I'm a high-class bitch, you guys. I love Dairy Queen. I like my Culvers. I like my Five Guys. I like my Vals. I don't like the cheap shit, you guys. My grandma raised me up on good quality junk food. And I miss her. I miss doing those things with her. And my grandma used to have this big boat. I grew up calling them boat cars, where they're like freaking like big with big massive trunks. And like, I see them in North Minneapolis all the time, where they take these old cars that are 24, 25, 26 years old, and they put like the big like wheels and the flashy lights and blah, blah, blah. So older car like that. My grandma had a big boat, old car, massive, when you opened up the hood, the engine was like exposed, and you can see through the engine and see the tar underneath, because there was nothing below it. So there was a massive engine, and anyone could fix the car. This was before like cars say you need a special key to even open up the trunk. You'll even open the engine. These engines were gas guzzlers, simple, easy devices. And my grandma, when you hopped in her car felt like you were the freaking limo. Like, it was a big, massive, cushiony, beautiful couch-like seats. And she used to have, remember guys, this is before cell phones became like small and wireless. And then she had like a landline phone, built into her car. And then on top of her car, it was a wireless antenna. So if you wanted to call anyone, you have to while you're in her car, you have to pick up the phone and you have to dial it. She literally had like a landline thing in her car, and then you can call people because it will go through the cellular antenna on top of the car. My grandpa and grandma great grandma were very into technology. So then I can call my dad or whatever from my grandma's car as we're driving around town. So I really, really, really loved my great grandma, and we would do things like that together. And my dad, and my stepmom and my siblings would also do things together. We would go to Subway, McDonald's, Val's, the same kind of thing. So my dad, my stepdad, my real dad, my stepmom, and my siblings and my grandma took me to similar places. That's why I'm fat. So I really, really, really enjoyed my childhood. And I grew up in St. Cloud. I went to Discovery Elementary. I went to North Junior High. And I did my first year of high school at Apollo. And that time my brother was a senior, and my parents wanted to move because my sister, we didn't want to raise my sister with my sister needed her own room. So at this point, my dad was trying to get us into a bigger house so my sister can have her own room. And we wanted to wait before my older brother Taylor graduated high school, because we wanted him to graduate from the same high school he began, so he won't have trauma when he goes to a new high school and has to make new friends. So I sacrificed, and I left Apollo my first year of high school. And I left all my friends, my paradise life in St. Cloud, and we did this pretty much for my sister. So sometimes when I look at her, I get angry and I get pissed, and I try to push those feelings aside, because we did this whole move for her. I lost my friends. I lost my paradise in St. Cloud, just so my sister can have her own room. Because in St. Cloud, it was hard to find a house that was affordable on my dad's low-income budget to find a place
for us to live. Because St. Cloud, guys, if you guys want a house in St. Cloud, it's a very expensive place. Definitely if you want like a 4-bedroom house. So we ended up moving to a place called Otsego. It's a small town outside of Elk River. And it's between pretty much Rogers and Elk River. And that's when I started going to Rogers High School. And my brother started to get his life together by working at the Holiday in town, getting his first car, and all that. And my younger brother Caleb went into Rogers Middle School, and my sister was so little yet that she didn't go to school yet. At this point in my life, when I started going to middle school, and my ADHD and my autism became more under control, this is when we started to discover my vision issues. So I didn't discover my vision issues until I was like 13 to 14 years old, because that's when I started finally getting my autism and my ADHD under control. And I was able to do it naturally because I started to know my body. I knew right when it was going to start, so I can stop it. And it's when puberty started. When puberty started, it kind of like killed like my autism part and enhanced my ADHD. And then that's when my visually impaired journey began. And I was 13 and 14 years old. Just getting into like high school. Just figuring myself out. And once I moved to Rogers, started going to Rogers High School, and because my dad lived in Otsego, that's when my life went from paradise on top of the hill, beautiful illusions, pure happiness and joy, to a roller coaster. But some of the ups and downs, weren't all bad. I had some good hills, I got some downhills, I got some good hills, got some downhills, I got some good hills, and I got some downhills. And this all started because my sister was born. If my sister was not born, if we did not have her, I would be a St. Cloud resident still. I went to college up in St. Cloud. I went to university up in St. Cloud, and I'll be a disabled, visually impaired man up in St. Cloud, not a visually impaired man in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So when my sister was born, it changed the whole trajectory of my life. And I am happy she's around. I love my sister. My sister has more pros than the cons. So I just want to let you know before I continue more into this story, because right now I'm making my sister look like the bad guy, the villain of my life. She's not the villain of my life. She's actually improved my life, my sister. I love my brothers, I'm gonna say, but my sister has taught me things about life that my brothers could never have taught me. She has improved my life in ways that I can't explain. I don't have a close bond to my sister. Me and my sister are not besties, I'm gonna say, but I still love and care for her. I'm very close, in my opinion. I'm very close with my half brother Caleb, my youngest one, because I like to play swords with him. I liked to play video games with him. Me and him used to build Minecraft fortresses together as my older stepbrother Taylor was at work. Because when me and Taylor was at work, me and Caleb were like, he's gone. Let's use the game console. No one is able to stop us because we only had one game console. And then we could build our Minecraft worlds together. And I'm sorry to say, as my brother Caleb, I don't know if he feels the same way. I feel like he's the other half of me, because I'm the positive and the floaty and the colorful one, and he's the serious, the I must follow all rules one. I'm the one like, oh, there's no cars, let's jaywalk, woohoo. My brother's like, no, there's no cars here. That arrow's not green. I'm not walking, even if there's no cars here, until that damn arrow turns green for me to walk. So me and my brother's more, I must follow protocol. I'm more, woohoo, there's no cops here and there's no cars here. Let's just jaywalk, woohoo. So I'm more of the free-spirited one. My brother Caleb is more of the I must follow traditional rules one. And it happened because I'm like that way. Woohoo! And my brother, because we always hung out with each other, he became the opposite. And what's funny is my favorite color is blue, right? You know what his favorite color ended up being? Red. And I hate red. I will wear it. I will have it near me, but my whole house is not going to be red, okay? So what happens is his least favorite color is blue, because he saw everything about me blue. Blue jeans, blue shirt, blue walls, blue bed sheets, blue pillowcases, blue, 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 blue. He's probably sick of seeing the color blue because of me. So then he probably chose red. And then, so our bedroom was half blue, half red, and Taylor chose whatever color Dad and Mom let him choose, because me and Caleb always fought over the bright colors. So me and my brother Caleb, I would die for that man. I would destroy whole armies for that man. And he is my best friend. Even if he doesn't know my brother. Now, my brother Caleb should know he's my best friend, because I'm just putting it on the internet. But my brother Caleb is my best friend. And I will never, ever, ever want him to go away. As long as he can text me, as long as he can call me, as long as I can send text to him, and we keep good communication, that's all what I want. The next section of this podcast episode is going to be my non-boring part of my life. From the year of my Rogers high school experience to my graduation and beyond. So, because I wanted to do the more boring part of my life at the beginning, so then it makes sense when I get to the exciting part. So, because if I just start off with the exciting part, you'd be like, oh, this makes no sense. So I just wanted to wait so I can get the boring part done, and we can start the exciting part about my low vision journey, how it is being low vision, how I feel about having low vision, how my low vision and autism and ADHD mix and clash and start a flame, how my life is going not according to plan. You'll hear that all next in the second part.